guys, Endercock12 here. Well, I just have to say one thing before we start this video. Happy New Year! So, it's first day 2014. One explanation is that I was going to do a video at midnight last night, but I fell asleep. So, anyway, I'm going to do a new series where I read a book, 2-3 chapters of one. Today we're reading Roald Dahl's The BFG, really good book. So it's a really good book. I do have to say myself, I read it about 5 times before. I enjoyed it a lot, and I think you guys enjoyed it too. So let's get started. Chapter 1, The Witching Hour. Sophie couldn't sleep. The brilliant moonbeam was slanting through a gap in the curtains. It was shining right on her pillow. The other children in the dormitory had been asleep for 4 hours. Sophie closed her eyes and lay quite still. She tried very hard to doze off. It was no good. The moonbeam was like a silver blade slicing through the room onto her face. The house was absolutely silent. No voices came up from downstairs. There was no footsteps on the floor above either. The window behind the curtain was wide open, but nobody was walking onto the pavement outside. No cars went by on the street. Not the tiniest sound could be heard anywhere. Sophie had never known such silence. And here's the picture. Perhaps, she told herself, this is what they called the witching hour. The witching hour is when somebody had once whispered to her a special moment in the middle of the night when every child and every grown-up was in a deep, deep sleep. And all the dark things came out from hiding and had the world to themselves. The moonbeam was brighter than ever. On Sophie's pillow, she decided to get out of bed and close the gap in the curtains. You got punished if you're caught out of bed after lights out, even if you said you had to go to the lavatory. And that was not acceptable as an excuse, as they got punished you just the same. But there was no one about now. Sophie was sure of that. She reached out for her glasses that lay on the chair beside her bed. It had steel rims and very thick lenses. She could hardly see a thing without them. She put them on. She slipped out of bed and tiptoed over the window. When she reached the curtains, Sophie hesitated. She longed to duck underneath them and lean out of the window, to see what the world looked like now that the witching hour was at hand. She listened again. Everything was deathly still. The longing to look up became so strong she couldn't resist it. Quickly she ducked under the curtains and leaned out of the window. In the silvery moonlight, the village street she knew so well seemed completely different. The houses looked bent and crooked like houses in a fairy tale. Everything was pale and ghostly and milky white. Across the road she could see Mrs. Branch's shop, where you brought buttons and wool and bits of elastic. It didn't look real. There was something dim and misty about that too. Sophie allowed her eye to travel further and further down the street. Suddenly she froze. There was something coming up the street on the opposite side. It was something black, something tall and black. Something very tall and very black and very thin. Chapter 2. Who? It wasn't a human. It couldn't be. It was 4 times as tall as the tallest human. It was so tall, its head was higher than the upstairs window of the houses. Sophie opened her mouth to a scream, but no sound came out. Her throat, like her whole body, was frozen with fright. This was the witching hour, all right. The tall black figure was coming her way. It was keeping very close to the houses across the street. hiding in a shadowy place where there was no moonlight. On and on it came, nearer and nearer, but it was moving in spurts. It would stop, then it would move on, then it would stop again. But what on earth was it doing? Aha! Sophie could see now what it was up to. Stopping in front of each house and could stop and peer upstairs of the window. Each house was in the street. It actually had been down a peer upstairs window. That's how tall it was. It would stop and peer in. Then it would slide on the next house and stop again and peer in. Also so on all along the street. It was much closer now that Sophie could see it more clearly. Looking at it carefully, she decided it had to be some kind of person. Obviously not a human, but it was definitely a person. A giant person, perhaps. Sophie stared hard across the misty moonlight street. The giant, if it was what he was, it was wearing a long black cloak. Had in one hand holding what looked like a very long, thin trumpet. In the other hand, it held a large suitcase. Then a giant had stopped now right in front of Mrs. and Mrs. Gucci's house. The Gucci's had a greengrocer's shop in the middle of the high street, and the family lived above the shop. The two Gucci children slept in upstairs front room. Sophie knew that the giant was peering through the window into the room where Michael and Jane Gucci were sleeping. From across the street, Sophie watched and held her breath. She saw the giant step back and pace. He put his suitcase down on the pavement. He bent over and opened it. Took something out. It looked like a glass jar. One of those square ones with the screw top. He unscrewed the top of the jar, poured what was in it into the trumpet. Sophie watched, trembling. She saw the giant straighten up again, where she saw him poke the trumpet through the open upstairs window of the room where the Gucci children were sleeping. She saw the giant take a deep breath, and woof, he blew through the trumpet. There's a picture. No noise came out, but it was obvious to Sophie that whatever he had been in the jar had now blown through the trumpet into the Gucci's children's bedroom. What could it be? The giant withdrew the trumpet from the window and bent down and picked up the suitcase. He happened to turn his head and glance across the street into the moonlight. Sophie caught a glimpse of the enormous, long, pale, wrinkly face. It was the most enormous ears. The nose was sharp as a knife, and above the nose there were two bright, flashing eyes, and the eyes were staring straight at Sophie. There was a fierce and devilish look about them. Sophie gave a yelp and pulled back from the window. She flew across the dormitory and jumped into her bed. She hid and handed them a blanket. And there she crouched, still as a mouse, and tingling all over. That's all I'm going to do for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Okay. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys later. Hope you enjoyed this book. Bye.